to go real quick. You're comparing and contrasting the two expressions. Very dark, sorry. Until daylight savings kicks in, it's going to be pretty dark in here. The two expressions regarding the idea of the Greek philosophy of death. In the Stoic period, in the Archaic period, you have sort of this Stoic conception, a little bit more of a expressiveness with the dying neobit in the Classical period. So that's one of the things that I wanted you guys to sort of parse out in your quick warm-up here, and part of the warm-up was just so I could get things ready to go for class. But the Classical period, the dying neobid, first Greek nude that we see of a female, but it's one of humiliation. So I'm just kind of getting you caught up with where we were at, and I'm comparing that to that other use of gestures. The whole object itself is performing a movement that is developing from the very stiff, compact, non-negative spaced objects of the past. We're moving towards higher and higher and greater gesturing. So that's where we did our gesture activities last week. Now we have an inclusion of drapery. So I mentioned this towards the end of the period, I think last Thursday. And so I'm just kind of getting us caught up with that so we can finish today and be ready for Rome tomorrow. The Parthenon pediment sculptures are classical conceptions of how drapery exists in the ancient world. The development, for instance, of this kind of wet drapery look is characteristic of the classical period. So you need to write down the words wet drapery. The idea that the drapery is showing and revealing the form underneath is one of the ways in which the Greeks are developing a sense of form, but also of covering that form in a sort of sophisticated technique. So the use of the word wet, as in it's clinging to the body to show the anatomy underneath, but is still covered. This is one of the ways that the female sort of body in the Greek period, which is supposed to be clothed, it's a proprietary thing, it's a piety thing, that is, it's a religious thing, is going to be characteristic of the classical Greek period. So even though they are clothed, you can still see the anatomy underneath. Yes?
Actually, in the book I read that a lot of the females were clothed and portrayed more like prideful because they were actually part of the mythological race, the Amazons.
So there's some other type of honoring of them, not just that they're so you're right. So they're not clothed for. It's not a shame thing. It's a proprietary thing. That is to say, it's part of the way in which society operates in order to honor them. It's proprietary. So I think so that's a very good, interesting thing that they are connected to the Amazonians. So there's an honoring of the sort of the mythological character of them to be covered. Very good. Put +5 on your paper. That was an excellent characteristic. But there's a couple places in which, for instance, the dying neobid who is humiliated, and that's why she's being uncovered. But we'll also see, especially towards the end of the classical period, Aphrodite, some of these other forms, they're supposed to be bathing, but there's this sort of sense, this coy sense of voyeurism that will be developed underneath the surface of the sculpture. So the sculpture, so it'll be these ideas of perhaps looking in on the beauty of the goddess in ways that are not always, traditional or traditionally sound. So they'll kind of be pushing the envelope a little bit, especially as we get to the Hellenistic age, when more and more people have money, and the use of classical sculpture becomes less and less religious and more secularized. So using it for the sake of putting it in your house as opposed to in a temple. You see some of the wet drapery here. This is sort of these are several different artifacts that are now at the British Museum. So there's lots of different sculptures. You've seen that one several times, and there's me being silly. Okay. And then, so Phidias is also continuing the wet drapery style. You have large scale statues that are completing this. This is a picture of Nike. And she is getting her shoe laced up right now, getting it set up for us. A lot of the works of this time period are taking about a decade to complete. It's a very slow process because you're trying to gather up the finances. And a lot of it's halting. All these large-scale processes are halting because of various wars, the biggest one being the Peloponnesian War. You can see this is probably the prime example that Phidias is showing us. With the Nike sort of unlacing her or lacing up her shoe here. Nike, by the way, is the same as the shoe company, Goddess of Victory, so there's a connection there. And the swoosh is going to be similar to Nike of Samothrace that we'll see later, in which Nike is depicted as sort of an angelic figure with wings. In this case, though, she is shown as just a female in sort of this wet drapery garb, but particularly around the torso area, you get a sense of a high technical skill. And this is a high relief that would be on the side of the Parthenon. So various areas throughout the Acropolis would have these high relief sculptures. It's a sort of an in-between moment that we're getting more of, gesturing for our characters. But unfortunately, the head has been eroded. This is a. Did anyone have this on the attributions? I don't have the label for this work. Does anyone have it finished on your? It might not even be in the snapshot. This is a depiction of it's a young woman who had died. This is a funerary block, and it's her sort of talking and sort of having an intimate moment with her servant maid, and it's supposed to sort of represent female culture, female life, representing the patriarchal system because she is reviewing and revering jewelry that her father probably gave her as part of a dowry, so it's like a remembrance of her. She probably died young. She probably died unmarried, so or at least married within close context there. What is it?
400 BCE.
400 BCE.
From the cemetery.
Okay, so I don't care so much about the name right now. It is an important work, and it's from 400 BCE. Thank you. But it more just shows the cultural elements there, and it has the wet drapery system that I'm talking about here. Getting into the late classical period, we have an increased sense of individuality. So as we move towards the broader Hellenistic systems that will come to dominate the second to up until the end of the before current era and into the current era, we see an emphasis on individuality. A lot of the characters are still going to retain some of the idealism of the past, but there's going to be a movement towards gesturing. However, the wet drapery kind of sloughs off a little bit. There's no more wet drapery. There's going to be this sort of stiff, billowing drapery that you'll see encapsulating or imprisoning the body, much like the body is an imprisonment of the soul. So the late classical period's kind of got these heavy works, heavy drapery, thick folds and knots. Chitin, yeah. But it's like a robe kind of structure for the Greeks. But you have these sort of thicker, billowing manifestations of the late classical. So just a subtle difference. The characters are going to be less youthful. There's going to be more emphasis on age and individuality. So this is work Mausoleos, which is where we get the word mausoleum. Works for like housing dead. Same kind of thing that we've been seeing. Death and funerary rituals are prominent for sculptures and art. You can see, for instance, with this work, a deepening sense of introspection to our characters, age, individuality. The characters are representing more of a portrait than anything else. They're also larger than life, so these are large-scale works, and you can see the heavy billowing nature of the folds of the drapery itself. Praxiteles is another late classical sculpture in this, from the style of Polycletus, but breaks away in certain respects. In this case, he has deep-set gazes that he focused on, so he's looking at the idea of the head gesturing and the gaze, and heavy, voluminous drapery. Praxiteles, though, will also have, when he describes other goddesses like Apollo as a god and Aphrodite, Praxiteles will be interested in this characteristic of softness, this characteristic beauty. But because it's the late period, that heavy drapery is going to be prominent when they are sculpting clothing. This is the Demeter from Knidos. Yes.
Okay.
Is it an artist?
I think so.
Yeah. Polycletus, Praxiteles, Lysippos. Those are going to be your big three sculptors. You have Callicrates and Isidora, so you have like the architects of Parthenon. Those are other important ones. Scopas, I'm not sure I'm assuming that he's an artist, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Praxiteles, Lysippos, Polycletus. Polycletus is first. Praxiteles, Lysippos. That's in that order. But see, here's so you have the Demeter of Knidos, which is the drapery, and then a very different conception from the same artist is the feminine beauty of Aphrodite. This work was meant to be sort of seen in the midst of a peristyle within a temple. So it wasn't meant to be on display as you see it today. The character was almost sort of in a private sort of setting because it's Aphrodite undressing for a bath. So it would have been next to a pool or something along those lines as a height of beauty. The original work would not have had these extra sort of structures here. That is a Roman copy, imperfections of the Roman copy. So just know that the originals were probably of a heightened technical skill. And that we're seeing more and more the use of the feminine body, starting just with the feminine goddesses as a way in which to describe the feminine form without the use of wet drapery. This is in 350, 340 BCE, and it's a Roman copy. Praxiteles creates sort of a softness with his gesturing, so his characters tend to be more along the elements of beauty, and beauty connected to a certain sense of sensuality, so sensualness. This is unlike Polycletus, who was more interested in balance and rhythm of form, so his like athletes like the Doryphoros, but their form and their faces are not sensual. They are usually of stoic balance of emotions. That was Polycletus. Polycletus sort of represents the most balanced approach to math and the human form, so proportion and balance. Praxiteles will move along the edge towards Dionysian sensuality, characters that are bathing like this and looking soft and beautiful, at rest, usually the gods and goddesses. And then we'll see Lysippos creating a frenetic energy, changing the proportions so that the character is a little bit more stunted, like their arms are a little bit like more compact, but they'll be moving in a sense of heightened sort of tension or heightened conflict within the form. A boxer or a Herculean character at rest. Lorraine.
When I was reading in the book about Nefertiti, they said the scholars considered it a genuine work of art because it was of the artist's own hand. And he
Excuse me, we're sorry to interrupt, but we're so lost. We're trying to find the Hollywood
Very
sign.
sorry.
We don't know
Oh my
where
God.
we're going.
We are also looking for the Space Age Mountain.
From California.
Last night was out here and they told me not to go turn. I keep turning and turning and I can't find where it's supposed to go. I'm
We're
not
not used to this heat. How do people live in this heat?
I know. It's terrible. It's not cold. Oh my
He takes the
goodness.
best selfie.
Dominic.
Wow, no fanny pack.
No. Never want to talk about somebody. 3 seconds. Now you talk about
Sorry, I wasn't in the right mindset for that at all. I'm all like, so the Praxitilian ideal of Aphrodite. Oh, okay.
And then
Administrators being wacky turds. And cue the ridiculous.
Would this be considered not genuine because it's
Not of their own hand.
Yeah.
It has its own value for teaching us about Greek history, and it is still an ancient work because it is a Roman copy. So there is elements that we understand the artist from, but you're right. There's going to be a major problem about seeing work that's not in the artist's own hand, even though it's of his own sort of formula. So it is a forgery.
It's like plagiarism.
Yeah, it's a form of plagiarism. It's an ancient plagiarism. But once something gets old enough, who cares about the plagiarism? Because it becomes important. If you plagiarize some Wikipedia page and put it on the ground, and then 2,000 years later someone digs it up, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, even though it's not a copy. But then again, that's kind of how things happened back then. They copied a lot of other stuff. They didn't just have it instant on their computers. They had a copy of it.
how many did the Romans copy?
Lots of things. Thousands of things. Thousands. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of it's copied. And part of it is that's what we find surviving because of the way they copied it and where and how much preservation that works here. So again, Praxitilian beauty or Praxitilian ideal, which is what I was kind of setting up before the wacky church, Justin. Before we were interrupted. Praxitilian beauty, particularly of Hermes. This is a depiction of Hermes here. I should say Hermes with Apollo. Hermes with the infant Bacchus. That's weird. As we get towards the late classical and to the Hellenistic, there'll be more and more depictions of Bacchus, who is Dionysius, the god of wine. So you're going to be seeing more of this emphasis on luxury and leisure and sort of the secularization, because Dionysius sort of represents a secularized version of the Greek pantheon, people who enjoy drinking and enjoy party and enjoy having a good time. So obviously Dionysius is going to be a main motif of secularized depictions of the gods. Yes?
Do they usually have like babies?
Not usually. This is...
Covered up, and
Oh, I
then
see.
them all- Yeah.
Having babies covered up?
Yeah, like
baby pose.
I don't know what you mean by
It's
babies
like
covered up.
they covered his bottom, but then.
Sometimes not. Most of the cherubs might be nude, but in this case, we're seeing it sort of Hermes connecting to the infant Bacchus, and yeah, he's covered for whatever reason.
She's like, I don't want the baby's bottom covered.
Notice how much more languid this character is compared to the Doryphoros. Even though the Doryphoros has a naturalism to its movement, the movement is of contrapposto, so it's weight bearing, loaded off to a side. The balance is more of a sense of rhythm than it is any type of strict formality or formal symmetry. And so the languidness of the character is betrayed by the contrapposto, but the contrapposto is so much more exaggerated. He's almost leaning to the sense of sort of a heightened sense, again, of sensuality. The character is beautiful, light proportions, the curve in the torso, it's all very gentle. In fact, the very softness to the character himself is characteristic of what's called Praxitilian beauty. It is just sort of has its own name. That it's a beautiful sense as opposed to a mathematically perfect sense that Polycleton was trying to get at. So it's a little different emphasis in their motivation, the meaning of the work. Interaction of negative space around it becomes just as important. Notice all of the negative space within this work gives it a heightened sense of delicacy. The character still has to stand, hold on to a support column or the structure here. Again, most likely because the Romans were not as technically as skilled as the Greeks, and so a lot of this work is not as well structured as a result.
I bet you his hand was back here. His other hand was
It could be, and we'll actually see some different restorations, not of Praxiteles' work, but we'll see of a feature of a Hellenistic work called the Lacoon group, and we'll see whether or not it should be going out or in, and what people view it as. It's been an interesting history of restoring these famous works. The Apollo Belvedere, again, is another Praxitelean beauty. Our character is walking, but they're walking with all the Apollonian might that we would come to expect of the gods, particularly of Apollo, who represents the heightened sense of beauty. Very popular in the 19th century Greek revival movement to look at Greek works and to see them as sort of this nostalgic view of the past. So in the 1800s, so that is 1800 CE, just a century ago, we have this Greek revival movement in which the Apollo Belvedere became the standard for Greek beauty of the past. It's since fallen out of favor. I mean, it doesn't have that much emphasis any longer in modern art history, but it definitely had for a time a big popularity. It's sort of like the Mona Lisa or the Venus de Milo, which would have been like Louvre emphasis there when France was a big art history hub. Seen for its perfect pose and beauty, our character, and today it's not as well admired. They don't see it as anything particularly special. But boy, did they advertise it a lot in the 19th century. Beatrice.
I hear a lot about Apollo, but I don't know.
Apollo is the Greek god of the sun. Why is he depicted so much? Again, he is sort of the sculptor's patron god. If that makes any sense, because he's the god. In part, he's the god of poetry. He has archery. He does basically most of the muse, most of the art happenings in the theatrical world. That goes from Apollo. So Apollo is like the god of arts.
Is that what they call, like when they have a mission from NASA, is that what they call it, like Apollo 11?
No, I don't know why they probably, yeah, it probably has something to do with the sun.
Okay.
So calling it Apollo is something like calling it the sun. I'm sure that's what it is. Yeah. It just sounds kind of cool, I guess, to name your spaceships after the god of the sun.
I would
Yes.
name it Prometheus.
So, if he's so important, so he's more important than Zeus?
No, but your god of the arts is sort of the person that you described. He has a particular characteristic about him that the sculptors are interested in. So Praxitelean beauty, you think Apollos. Apollos is about sort of beauty. Yeah. Zeus is about strength and leadership and all that. Yeah.
If this were a more modern statue, you could be looking someone else. Be like, I'm Apollo. Who are you?
Yeah.
Or like,
Okay.
Zeus
Yeah, like we
is-
don't even know what he's like.
No, I don't think
it'd
so.
be
I think
taking
so.
up
Yeah.
name
Like,
we
I'm
don't even know.
Yeah, maybe there's some other obscene thing.
Like he can go like
Why-
this.
why are you-
Like,
Yeah.
You can do it.
There's another one there. How about that?
Oh yeah. Look at
You're
I
doing
was
that kind
like,
of
he's
thing,
like,
right?
hey.
Back and forth.
Look at this.
The Simpos!
Look like that.
Late classical period, reforming, transforming the polyclean. Yeah, Justin, we already established that you were talking. He's got like a kind of thing going. This is called the scrapper, apoxamenos. Apoxamenos is like you're the boxer or wrestler, so the character is sort of getting stretched out. He is also in a in-between moment of gesturing that is not necessarily a perfect setup for his boxing style or the wrestling style that would be characteristic. And the character, as a result of kind of being in that in-between moment, is giving it that sense of energy to the work that is above and beyond the Apollonian, Praxitelean beauty. Even though he's got the life proportions and the exaggerated contrapposto, the character's proportions are changed so that the character is a little bit more compact. So each one of Lysippos' work are going to be characteristically compact.
He's covered himself.
He has not covered himself. That is a later addition. Yes.
How do they get the knees? Like, how do they get?
How they get the knees to look like that?
Yeah, it looks
like real knees, right? Like all the extra like ligaments and tendons. That's one of the examples of why this work shows so much sort of energy is the pushing of these sort of tightened flexing kind of forms and muscles. They are more and more representing the ligaments and tendons that go underneath the body. This has been a classic to late classic conception. Exactly right. All the little veins and things that are popping out as the person is pushing off the ground. They're understanding the way in which the body has gravity. Shows a gravitas not only of the form, the seriousness of the form, but of the reality of what goes underneath the body that keeps it up, the sense of gravity. The characters aren't just these floating front statues. They actually have weight that is distributed in different ways, and when it's distributed one way, it causes the body to flex, it causes the muscles to tense up, it causes the bones to pop out in certain ways, and so as a result, I got to sculpt all that, and I got to know how the body changes from one moment to the next. Yes?
What's behind his leg?
That again is a pull. Again, this is a Roman copy. So remember, Roman copies are not as technically skilled, and so there's usually like some type of pull or something that keeps the work from falling apart, in part because of their technical abilities.
So you mean the work was even more amazing before?
Usually the Greek works were more technically skilled. That tends to be the way. Romans would use it as like craftsmen would be finishing these works up. So, but I mean, even still, it's pretty technically skilled by today's standards, certainly. Particularly because most of these sculptors are about like 20, 22 when they perfect their skills. So it's not like, you know, you guys. I know. Well, wait until we get to Alexander the Great, and I'll tell you some of the stuff that he accomplished before he was even my age. So this is what we go on.
Like, I made my first lion at age 8, and then I hunted my first jaguar at age 10.
So by the end of this classical era and into sort of the Hellenistic age, in the 4th century BCE, the heightened elements of the classical era are seen in the weary Heracles. This is found in Pompeii, which is in Italy, so it's on the outskirts of Greece at this point. And we see the same kind of lascivious approach. In this case, the character, instead of having this frenetic energy, the character is sort of the opposite. He's tired, so he's resting on something after he's defeated the Nemean lion. It's one of his main 7 labors that Hercules goes through in order to accomplish and to prove his worth. But you see sort of that robust and anatomical perfection, almost to the point of exaggeration with a character like Heracles. This character is huge. It's much grander than life. So here's an example of a person compared to that. So it's sort of showing not only the Greek sort of use of exaggerated gesture by the end of the classical period, but also the use of Roman copying of Greek work for the sake of its own sort of secular society. That is, like, I produce these works because I love looking at Greek work decorated in my home. So that's why it's found in Pompeii. Yes?
Okay, I have a question about his name. Is it Hercules or Heracles?
Both.
What?
Hercules or Heracles are the same character.
I did not know that.
Different stories happen with a slightly different name. Yes. Excuse me? He's leaning on a club that is resting on a boulder, and over the club, you notice, what is that? It's a lion. So he's skinned the lion, the Nemean lion, which is like one of his labors. He's like defeating a lion, I think, for a town. I'm not sure the exact story.
Yeah, it was like the lion was like tearing up.
Well, there's a Disney version and there's the real version. So, but
he was like tearing up the town.
yeah, so he defeats the lion as part of him sort of proving his worth to the gods.
Taking a classical trip to movie theaters to watch the world where he's drunk.
All right. So this is the weary Heracles. We're not going to do that thing here. And then again, the 4th century BCE, the start of the Hellenistic period, this is the end of our classical Greece as we know it, is an important character in the name of Alexander. By the time Alexander is my age, he has accomplished literally the conquering of the known world at the time, and it kind of sometimes makes me feel a bit jealous or makes me feel a bit unaccomplished. What am I doing in my life? That I can look back on the past and know these great characters have done great things that I'll never even begin. Our scope is so much more limited. Alexander the Great, a character who by the age of 18, 19 has an accomplished general, is defeating grand armies and empires of the ancient East, and in a particularly momentous victory over the Persians, we see the Battle of Issus. And this mosaic celebrates that important victory that puts Greece on the map as one of the major empires of the ancient world. Alexander essentially unifies in ways that Pericles and other kings of the classical era that sort of were uniting for the sake of defeating imperial powers in the East were unable to accomplish. People loved Alexander. He was a very magnanimous figure. He fought alongside his people. He had a strategic weariness, so he was able to accomplish great things.
Didn't he marry Cleopatra?
That was Mark.
Right.
No, I thought that was our Alexander the Great.
I don't think he married Cleopatra.
No.
That was. I thought it was Mark Antony.
Yeah, it was Mark Antony.
Mark Antony marries Cleopatra as an end of the pharaonic dynasties, with Cleopatra marrying Mark Antony, who was part of the Ptolemaic kingdom of the Greek Empire. So you get like this this Egyptian, basically an Egyptian colony within the imperial power of Greece. I think. I have to double check that. Huh? Yeah, and then you have, right. Yes?
Oh, I know this guy. He might not be able to conquer the world at 18, but he already has 5 hotels.
Who's that?
Guy. He's like really rich. I don't know.
That you know?
Huh?
That you know?
Yeah.
You like know him personally?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Like, he always
But you don't know his name, you just know him personally?
Yeah, I
Wow.
That doesn't make any sense to me. All right.
His name
Just stop it, you don't make
sense.
sense.
It's like, it was like Knack.
Have you met him?
Yeah.
But you don't know his name.
Wait,
No, it's like.
So why are you talking?
No,
Okay, that's interesting. So you're right. Thank you for making me feel even worse. That a guy that you don't even remember is better than me. Okay. Appreciate that. Which one in this series here is Alexander?
The one with the big guns and big spear, kicking and.
Big guns
Is it
and
the
big
one on the
spear.
horse with the golden no, he looks cool.
That guy? No. With the horse butt right in front of him?
No, the one on top.
By the way, why are we depicting horse butts? I don't get that.
because it's like
Because butts are very common in the Greek art.
What we're seeing is an increased use of a three-dimensional space and a two-dimensional illustration. So instead of, imagine that this was the ancient Near East, we'd be seeing all these characters in profile, we'd be seeing a canon. We're breaking away from all that. We're looking at things perspectively. So through the sake of perspective, our characters are falling, are around. We got lots of energy here. This is our Darius. So this is our Persian king who is being defeated at this time. And our Alexander. Do I have a picture of? There it is. There's Alexander the Great being depicted in profile with a strong sense of his sort of Greekness in this work here, this ethnic Greek. But he has got the large eyes showing his sympathetic nature. And he is in battle here, fully decked out with a patrapaic form on his features. This is a mosaic, meaning it's a crushed inlay of shell, and it's very, very technical to produce. The work is actually produced to be on either a wall or on a floor. and it is using cement and tiny shells of color, different colors, and you're basically beating them together to create this object, a mosaic. The reason why you have mosaics is because they last longer than paintings, even a fresco. Yes. These are not mosaics, these are stained glass, at least the closest thing to stained glass that I do. So we can't have molten glass on this. This scene is historical in nature, which is a bit unique to the Greek period, so make sure you know that historical events like this, as opposed to mythological ones, are few and far between in terms of the actual art timeline. So the Battle of Issus is an important historical victory. It represents the unification of Greece. Yes? I do not know where the original one is located, but the Roman mosaic copy, I believe, where does it say where it is? It's in Pompeii. This original one, it's in a house in Pompeii. Shh, Dominic. Shh. Thank you. Attica.
Is that his face on his chest?
Exactly.
No, it is not his own face on the chest. Oh, that'd be kind of cool. I'd want to run into battle with my face on my chest.
No.
It's actually, I think it's like a Medusa. I'm not sure exactly, but or it might be some other character. But it's in a patricaic form. It's supposed to strike fear in the hearts of your enemies. This is what he accomplished. Literally took Greece, which is where, like right here. And then this becomes something along the lines of the Greek Empire.
Alexandria. That's what I call it.
So we started in the Cycladic areas here, and then we get the Greek Empire. Now this isn't for very long. It's for maybe 100 or a couple hundred years, and then this will quickly get subsumed because this is a lot of land to try and control. And so you divide these. What you try and do is after Alexander is on the scene, you have all of his major generals, the people who are sort of underneath him. You're now like this imperial power, but he immediately converts that power into centralized kingdoms, and so his major generals become large landowners or kings in these various areas. And you have the Seleucids and the Ptolemies in Egypt, with Mark Antony, Cleopatra eventually being the last of those. You have the Peloponnese. So you have these characters up in here. You have the Macedonian ones. The big ones here are the Peloponnesus, Macedonian. These characters up here are going to be the central ones. All this other stuff is sort of extra land, spoils of war after defeating the Persians. This is the major victory, and this ushers in the Hellenistic period. What is up with our clocks? I don't need to show you those. Read Hellenistic work. Dying Gaul of the Hellenistic period. So now this represents a unified Greek spirit. That's why it's called Hellenism. And along with that comes a great secularizing of artwork. So we'll see that work is going to... Secularize means non-religious. Meaning work that's more for the sake of your house and decorativeness and just enjoying art, as opposed to structures that are built as victory monuments or temples or sacred spaces. Our dying Gaul is in the same, our dying trumpeter is in the same spirit as the dying warrior of the classical period, the dying neobid. Dying is a big thing for Greeks, and so you're thinking about what happens after death. Both you and your enemy basically go to the same place. You go to this underworld. So there's not a whole lot of changes. Death is a kind of a final thing for Greeks. And so there's this stoic mentality about it, this emotional balance to what life is like and what the hand that dealt you and your sort of fate is decided for you. And so even with your enemy, you sort of show them nobly. And so this is a noble depiction of what would be considered an uncivilized character. The human conception is developed and overlaid onto a very powerful warrior that would have been up in the Celts up in the north of Europe. So these characters were considered uncivilized. They were brutish. They were these white warriors that had these big mustaches that would run in, usually into battle naked. And so it was just kind of intimidating because these characters would run at you, totally don't care if they're going to die, and it was like it was, not to me like a sort of a weird thing, but it's sort of like the Iraq armies today kind of fleeing from ISIS, which almost had this intensity about their views of things, that it sort of scared people, and so you could have huge armies being defeated by small bands of Celts because they were just so like in your face, crazy, that it seemed like they were more intense. So there's like this weird fear thing going on. So they were well respected for that place. But here you see a Celt dying. In the midst of that, he's sort of getting a second thought. He's got this emotion to him. He's not just dying in sort of this hatred. He's dying in understanding what's happening. Okay. Well, he's the dying trumpeter. He's a Gaul, which is the Celtic or French groups that are in that region, this tribal region in Europe, and he's dying as a result of wounds to his leg, and you get this sort of heroic nudity of this Greek warrior. You can see that face then again, that face though. Kind of tense brow. And it's currently residing in the Capitol Museum in Rome. So here is the work, the conception here, pretty famous work. In-law, brother-in-law. Yeah, people say, well, we looked alike on the trips too, because we, have the beard thing. The Nike of Samothrace is a beautiful work, probably the most famous work of the Hellenistic era. Please know it. Please write it down. It is an important work. It used to be, it's meant for the top of a mountain, but it's sculpted to look like a prow of a ship. It wouldn't actually be on a prow of a ship because it's heavy stone. But it's to look like it's on a prow of a ship that's jutting out from a mountain. So imagine this work being up on the top of a mountain overlooking the ocean, and that it's meant to be sort of a guiding force or, again, a propaganda tool for those coming in to know that this place is a Hellenistic Greek empire that you're coming into. This work is much larger than life. Not as much larger as you would expect, I suppose, but being up elevated above you would be very impressive. The work represents all of the developments of the late classical period of the heavy drapery, not the wet drapery. But the wet drapery is still being pushed back by the wind, this sort of expectation of environment. And so the artist here is understanding that this work would meant to be on a cliff face and to think about the direction of the wind. And so the sculptor actually includes the interaction of the environment, which is a unique characteristic of the Hellenistic period. Instead of it just being the character in isolation, now he's interacting with an implied environment. Write that word down, implied environment. These characters are interacting with an implied environment. So this Hellenistic sculpture is implied environment. We have our wings are spread out in full in this angelic scene of the Nike of Samothrace is one of the main developments of the Christian conception of angel. The Greek Nike is kind of got the same overlapping ideas. The hybrid, human-animal hybrid, just in a new, almost more elegant way than we've seen in the past, particularly in the ancient Near East. This is the 2nd century BCE, so 190 BCE. Here is it in its current context. It's currently at the Louvre. And unfortunately, it's not one of those works that is super heightened in terms of its advertising and popularity. But it's one of the most important works that they have, and they don't even really advertise it a whole lot. In fact, it's on a stairwell. It's just like in a staircase in between two mezzanines, the two levels of art. And so most people just walk right by it. I'm like, but what? That's the Nike of Samothrace. Like, come on. So it's a work that sort of has its own place, but it's also a place that people sort of skip it because you're looking literally at thousands of Greek statues. So it's oftentimes hard to see. This is what it looks like from another angle. You can see the prow of the ship that it would be standing on. And the work just has this beautiful form to it, elegant form, particularly of the hybrid. I know. You would think it's just so gorgeous. Well, obviously the work used to have probably some hands out like this and a head up, and probably beautiful flowing hair, but all that's been gone.
Dude,
Do you have a question or comment? Oh yeah, the head, all that stuff's been destroyed. Yeah, it almost has like a beauty of the figure without those things. You almost don't need them. to see the form. It looks right how it is, at least for me, but maybe not. Maybe not for you. Maybe because I've seen it so much and I've talked about it so much. So yes, there I am. I'm the Nike as well, and this one I'm jumping. Do a lot of jumping pictures. You can see people just like walking past, like, where's the, where's Napoleon's tomb, Dad? All these dumb people. Wrong building.
Wait, is that the Mona Lisa or is that a poster?
That is not the Mona Lisa. That's a post. They're probably all like, the Mona Lisa's that way, and everyone's like, ooh, let's just go see the Mona Lisa, because that's like the only thing people care about in the Louvre. Even though there's literally like miles and miles of beautiful art, people will congregate around the Mona Lisa for hours, just like staring at this one thing that's behind bulletproof glass. It may not even be original, so
I
who
don't
knows?
see what's the big deal about the Mona Lisa.
Well, we'll talk about why the Mona Lisa has its fame. There's a lot of both political reasons and also, real artistic reasons. It is an interesting work for its own right. Alexandros of Antioch on the Meander. This is the Venus de Milo. Venus de Milo is also like a Mona Lisa. So speaking of Mona Lisa, this work also is a pushed propaganda, a famous work that has over time come to characterize what art history is. The Venus de Milo has no arms, which adds to its sort of allure, I guess. And in part, the other things that develop its allure is the fact that it was shipwrecked. It was at the bottom of the ocean, and it was recovered along with other types of artifacts. It was recovered by the French, and so the French have put it in their big museum, and then they needed to promote their big museum, so the Venus de Milo becomes an advertising powerhouse. They also are able to secure the Mona Lisa. So along with the Mona Lisa, the Venus de Milo become the art capital of the world at the time, France, Paris. They become their sort of keystone images that they wanted to display. So that's why you see all this kind of stuff on handbags and backpacks and art lovers galore. Venus de Milo, Mona Lisa in particular. So that's sort of the draw. It's a manufactured famousness, celebrity. Yes. I need to go through. Let's see. How many more do I want? I don't really want to do the dying fawn. That's gross. I'll literally do the Lacungrun, like, I'll do this as part, because this is technically, this is first century CE, so I can do this as the start. The Hellenistic to Roman transition will be an interesting one, so, yeah, go ahead and turn in your packets like I promised that you would be doing. Turn the lights, Dominic. We start Rome tomorrow, guys. So be ready. Let the gladiatorial games begin.
Gladiator games.
He has this evil look behind his cup too.
I'm excited about Rome because it's about, our thematic unit on Rome is about violence. So we're looking at people killing each other.
A battle we'll just name it like the different things.
I mean, you should be.
What? No, like little cities like we're Athens, they're Sparta.
No, we're Spartans.
You've already done this. It sounds like you've already done this.
Everybody knows
It's
that.
fun. And Athens prevails.
You're defeating.
I should have a very important question that you guys made.
Hold on, I got other things. Put it over by the table with all the other pyramids. Yeah. See you guys.
How do people shape your picture?
They don't.
You should.
Exactly. They always have like no chest hair at all looking at hair. And then they're just like clean shaved. No morning.
Little Steve, have a +10.
What did you do?
Put a +10 on your paper for being so touristy.
I'm so not very touristy. Well, this is what my brother would do.
I'm kind of wacky tourist. I was going more like hooligan. Like British hooligan, like at a soccer game. I kind of got that going on. I got it going on a little bit. I got it going on.
We should just have a surprise seminar. Who's better? Athens, Sparta, Athens.
Well, if Spartans never died, they just miss out on all the action.
This is Athens.
Sparta. No, Athens cannot make it.
If you want to make this, it's Sparta, we would be Athens.
No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't see Sparta.
Let's all face the truth.
No.
Except we would be Athens for
Yeah, dude.
I don't know exactly
Technically,
why.
Spartans were smart because they wore less armor, making them
They
faster.
are shaving.
No, they didn't get forced by narrow. They're
They
dead.
are shaving.
They had like a little bit of armor and they were extremely fast. Okay.
They were extremely fat or they were extremely
Fat, squeeze the train.
The Greek, they didn't have a whole lot of hair. I don't think that's true anymore. Athletes would shave just like today they shave. So
A very sharp knife. I can't.
and also remember they're sculptures, so you can choose how you want to. It's not like they're like doing all the armpit hair and the beef and all that. So I think you can
Oh,
choose.
that's gonna be. What? Where?
What? Ew.
Where?
Oh.
No, nowhere.
Oh my god. Mr. Morris feels upset at me. Actually, why can't somebody from your chair?
I have no idea. There's only big all like.
I'm sorry, Mauricio, not you.
I have a seal on my bed. If I were to get an
It
A on
doesn't
one of the
matter.
quiz.
No, get the packet.
Alright.
Yeah, probably a packet missing. Oh my god, there's a centipede right there.
Oh my god.
Ah. You seem the most nervous about it, so I thought I'd grab the centipede there. Because I go like, no, I'm like, I'm gonna get injured. It was gross with this big brown thing. Ah, it's gross. Dude, mice scare the crap out of me. I was thinking, oh, big deal. But when you see a mouse, like, what the? No! You're like, ah! Ah!
He's just let it be. Like, he doesn't even care about it.
Who? Oh my gosh, he's all like, whatever.
Exactly. Guys, we're going to that little tube and hold.
Oh. Where's the wacky tourist? We got 1, 2, 3. Check it out, I'm a wacky tourist. See, I got the shirt, the soccer shirt. It says England on it. I'm a hooligan. I'm a hooligan. I got it going. Yeah, it's a hooligan. Hey, ole, ole, ole. Now did the principals come into your room?
Yeah, that was
Your first period?
That was weird.
I was in the middle of this really like serious art history. It totally screwed it up. I'm all like the nature of death in the. I'm a pretty like weird serious teacher sometimes.
They just came in. It was like.
So like the nature of death in the Greek ideals. So we're talking about Greek history. I'm talking about how they view death and all this stuff, and I'm all serious, and I'm sitting there like, oh my god, I'm going in like, wow, California so hot. I'm like, wow. Everyone's like, how Greek
You know what? That's where my stuff like.
Allie, where's your wacky tourist?
I don't have anything.
No, I've been to Disneyland so
Like, have to be like bad attitude. Like, sorry guys, it's Tuesday, and I got Health Academy dress. I'm sorry.
They might as well.
This is hooligan. I'm not tacky. I can't be tacky. It's so hard to be. Like, I'm like trying to pull it out. I'm like, that is too tacky. In fact, just even unbuttoning the shirt and have like a soccer thing. Like, I'm like,
You could have at least worn like sandals.
where's my tie? I'm like, I'm used to wearing ties.
With that tie. With the t-shirt.
We need to have I gotta get the video going. Hold on.
What video? What video? Are we still watching it?
Just that one video.